there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. As you probably know, the 2025 NBA Draft, it got underway on Wednesday night. 30 picks were made. The first round is in the book. Matt Norlander, it's good to see you. We were both on television, CBS Sports HQ, throughout the night. You apparently had time to change out of your clothes. I did not. I'm still tied up.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we are now doing this well after 1 a.m. GB had to stay on the desk and record a number of segments. They cut me loose. So I just did some tidying up, got to change. Here we go. Appreciate everyone, by the way, that watched. We actually had some pretty outstanding viewership from what I can tell on CBS Sports HQ and YouTube. And then we got a number of comments just giving us some love for the coverage. So we genuinely appreciate it. We try and put out a product that's entertaining, informative, give you intel, good insight across the board. Thanks to everyone at HQ to make it happen. We do this every year. Now we do this pod late night. GP, like if you're dialing into this show, be it on YouTube Live, after the fact, listening, like there's just not a lot left to say about Cooper Flagg to Dallas. Great stuff there. We knew it was going to happen. Dylan Harper going to San Antonio. Not a surprise there. So I think you'd agree with me. There's nothing left to squeeze out of that sponge. Like we'll see what their pro careers become, and it's an amazing night for them, unquestionably. But to me, the biggest story, there's a couple of big plot points that we got to talk about on the show, but I think Ace Bailey going to 5 to the Jazz, and tied to that, like Philly didn't trade the pick, couldn't trade the pick. They take Edgecombe, the favorite to go in that spot. So Edgecombe goes there. Knipple, the expected pick to go to Charlotte, he goes there. Although I will say that I got told, like, I think when they were around like pick 10 or 11, that Charlotte, Utah, and Washington all got approached by a variety of different teams just trying to see if a last-minute deal could come to be. Didn't happen. You normally don't get teams that have like top 5 picks trade out. Didn't go down. In the end, Ace Bailey goes to Utah despite not working out there and, allegedly trying to land and get himself to Washington or somewhere after that. Danny Ainge was not going to be, and Austin Ainge now, who's running that outfit there as well in the front office. We're going to be told who they were going to pick. So they take the guy that they're most comfortable with. What were your thoughts on Ace Bailey ultimately landing there? Because the one intriguing thing to me or two, real quick. I just couldn't get myself to believe that Jeremiah Fears would go top 5 in this draft, and he did not. And 2, Ace Bailey to Utah was the one that I just didn't hear discussed all that much. You heard plenty like, will Philly take him anyway? Will Charlotte take him? Is he going to go to Washington? New Orleans wants him. Could he slip that far? Or ultimately, would Brooklyn move up to try and get him? Utah, you have heard very little. And Utah, lo and behold, is the team that gets him.
So on our hour-long pre-draft show on CBS Sports HQ, among the things we were asked is like a bold prediction heading into the night. And the thing that I submitted is that even though everybody at this point, including the betting markets, are projecting Ace Bailey to fall outside of the top 5, I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 5. Either somebody's going to take him despite him turning down a workout invitation, or somebody is going to move into the top 5. But I don't believe Washington's just going to be able to sit there and get him at 6. So Utah pulls the trigger at 5, and that story is done. And I love it. Not because I'm certain it'll be the right pick, because the way the draft actually unfolded, if I were in charge, I would have taken Trey Johnson over Ace Bailey. I think Trey Johnson's a better prospect for a variety of different reasons. But I understand I'm in the minority on that. So it's not what I would have done, but it is absolutely what I would have done if I had Ace Bailey as best prospect available at that point. Because imagine, just think through this from the other side. I think heading into this night, a lot of people are saying, well, how do you take him if he doesn't want to be there? How do you take him if he won't come work out with you? How do you take him if he'd never had lunch with you? Well, ask that question from a different direction. How do you not take him if you are convinced after years of evaluating him that he is the best prospect available? You would pass on him. Why? because he hired inexperienced representation who has tried to manipulate the process of this entire thing because he's a teenager who thinks he doesn't want to be in Salt Lake City. Teenagers don't know where they want to live or what might be amazing once they get there. So if you have this grade on him and you are genuinely of the belief that this is the best player available, you do what Utah did. You take him, you hope he changes his tone very quickly, and you get him to what will be his new home, and then you show him, regardless of what you thought you wanted to do, as it pertains to starting your NBA career, we can make this your home. We can make this a good spot for you. We can convince you this can be a great spot for you. I don't know how it'll play out, but I like the way Utah handled the situation.
So do I. We'll see how it plays out. If Ace Bailey plays one more time for the road, if Ace Bailey plays to his ceiling is going to be one of the 3 best players in this draft. And it really, there is a scenario where if he is all the goods and some of the players picked ahead of him are not, he's the best player to come out of this draft. It's not the most likely outcome, but it is one potential outcome on the table. Good on Utah for doing it. And there's some real intrigue there. Let's just combo Utah real quick here, because there's a couple other teams that have a very good case. Take Dallas out of it. They get Cooper Flagg. They win the draft and all that good stuff. I get that. But Utah getting Bailey at 5, and then they make their move to get Walter Clayton Jr. at 18. They traded into that spot. Washington wound up trading down a few spots from that. I believe we said it on the mock pod. If not, I talked about it like 3 times on Wednesday on HQ on a variety of spots there, including our draft show. I just gotten way too much intel from too many NBA sources that said Walter Clayton Jr. is not going to be there at like 21 or 22. Like, he is rising. He is jumping high. He should be gone probably late teens. That is exactly what happened. When he got selected, there were a number of players who had some really emotional responses. Liam McNeely, we'll get to him before the pod's over. Clayton Kaman Malawach was a river, and it was amazing to see. Love those stories. We kind of highlight them every year, and it never gets old. He's an incredible story. To be able to have turned himself into a top 20 pick. I love it. And then if you're Utah, you really might have gotten the 2 guys who are most physically and mentally equipped to be able to handle tough NBA shot making. So regardless of what happens with Utah on Thursday, to get Bailey and to get Clayton, I thought was massive. And I think that the franchise is destined to be one of the 3 biggest winners from the 2025 NBA draft.
Yeah, I'm a little more skeptical of Walter Clayton Jr., I think, than you or most. I'm not ruling anything out, if only because you'd be silly to be the draft analyst talking on video who is just speaking in absolutes a few hours after players were picked. That'll make you look real stupid down the road. On nights like the nights, everybody's sure, or at least they talk like they're sure of what's smart and what's dumb. But the truth is, you don't really know for certain. So would I have moved up to take Walter Clayton Jr. in this way? No, I don't think so. But clearly they believed in him. And to your point, they have added 2 rookies that are arguably the 2 best hard shot makers in this draft. Obviously, there's different concerns for both of them. With Ace Bailey, it's okay, we know you can get the ball in the basket, but what else can you do, and how do you impact winning? With Walter Clayton, it's all right, we know you can take tough shots and you're comfortable in uncomfortable situations, but you're also, on the smaller side, and how are you going to hold up? Neither one of these players are perfect prospects, but I do think they make for an interesting draft class. If you don't mind me transitioning,
Sure.
Another franchise that I think did really well tonight is San Antonio. The Dylan Harper pick, I think, is a no-brainer. That's a little bit like, if you're the Grizzlies in whatever draft, Zion Williamson goes 1, you're taking John Morant 2. It's like you don't even really have to think about it. You just you know who you're taking at number 2. Dylan Harper was that guy in this draft. I think just about anybody was going to take him at number 2, but they didn't match him with Carter Bryant at the 14th pick. Mm-hmm. I love, you and I have talked about him a lot. I had him as a top 10 prospect in this draft. And when you're a San Antonio franchise that already has your future MVP, all right, you got that guy. You've already got De'Aaron Fox. You've got the reigning rookie of the year. You add the second best prospect in this draft. I know some franchises out there at 14, 16, 19, they're still swinging, trying to find their Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But with San Antonio, sure, that'd be great. But if this thing's going to go a certain way, it's going to be Wemby and let's just say Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, De'Aaron Fox, some combination of that, and surrounded by role players, surrounded by 3-and-D people, keep the floor spaced on one end, switch everything on the other end. And Carter Bryant, in my opinion, of the players who were available in this range, is clearly the best 3-and-D prospect available. High character, great work ethic, good motor, all the measurable stuff. San Antonio, Oklahoma City seems to be on a different level right now in terms of just roster construction and where they're at for the future. But outside of the Thunder, I don't know that I'd want anybody's future more than I want the San Antonio Spurs right now.
So it's a great one too. I'll just pass along. I just found this to be some interesting feedback in the past few days. I just heard from NBA teams that were in no position to even be in top 5, top 6 in this draft anyway. But I heard intriguing feedback about Harper in that it was just kind of, as I just, I'm reaching out to some are finding me. We're just talking about a variety of things. And one front office person in particular brought this up. And it was more along the lines of like, okay, Flagg is on his own tier. But like this idea that Dylan Harper has separated from Edgecombe and Bailey and Knipple and Trey Johnson, like, why is that a thing? Like, what I'm getting at is that he may well wind up, and he was deservingly the second pick in the draft. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been that, but there is league-wide from what I was feeding back on, there's just a little more like, San Antonio might be the perfect place for him to go, but also, is it the perfect place for him to go because of the situation he's going to go into? It's a really good franchise, but now he's going to be asked to participate in a specific role that he has not done for a very, very long time. And with the way that he's wired, is this the best place to give him the best chance of success? And just some interesting feedback from NBA people. I'm interested to see if that winds up bearing out or not. There was a couple of questions just about some of the pre-draft stuff, like he was going to be the number 2 guy. So I heard feedback from a couple folks like, he wasn't registering the highest among the guys who were, the biggest killers, the hardest workers, all that kind of stuff. So just a little feedback on that, GP. That's all.
Totally reasonable perspective. I would counter it with this. Here's how I can prove to you, not prove, that's the wrong verb. Here's how I can make the case that Dylan Harper did separate from the Con Knipples and the VJ Edgecombs and the Ace Baileys and the Trey Johnsons, because San Antonio took him, even though he's not a great roster fit given what's already on the roster. Like, there are some franchises that took players tonight and they fit perfectly for what it is they're trying to do going forward. They've got a jumbo guard in Stephon Castle. They've got a primary league guard in De'Aaron Fox. They didn't really need to add another 6'6" guard, but they did it anyway. Why? I don't want to speak for the franchise, but this is the answer: because he's the second best prospect in this draft. And we don't really care if he's a perfect fit for our roster. We just want the second best prospect in this draft. I think that, combined with the reality that most people did have him labeled that way, suggests that, with all due respect to the people you were talking to, I think most did believe that Dylan Harper had separated from the pack, even if not everybody did.
Yes, for sure. What will be interesting, last thing on Harper and Bailey, and let's keep on, I'll touch on your San Antonio stuff and we'll keep it moving here. I am interested to see 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, will their season at Rutgers have any sort of continuation in the NBA for either of these guys? It is super weird that 2 top 5 picks were on a team that was not close to being good enough to make the NCAA tournament. Why you would be drafted, as we said on the show, is different from team-related success, but still, just a little bit of that came back with me. And one of the other things with Harper is, like, did Bailey get most of the slack for this? Like, it was Harper's team. He was running the offense, and he had some issues with illness and all that kind of stuff as well. Just intriguing to hear from some NBA folks on this. And there have been instances where highly drafted players were on bad teams with bad records, and they didn't have good NBA careers despite that. There are a couple exceptions to the rule. Let's keep it moving. The Bryant pick falling to them is, I don't think San Antonio thought he was going to be there. I don't think so. And for him to be drafted there, I think that is ideal for him and a really good fit overall. Let's keep it moving. Trey Johnson goes 6 to Washington. For me, Trey Johnson, I've said it on the show, roll one more time. Number 2, only behind Flagg for me. I think he has the second best chance of having the second best career of anyone in this class. He goes 6 to Washington. I think he'll do well there, and I think Washington in general has a good chance to really go somewhere with this franchise. Do you have any lingering thoughts on either him or fears at 7 before we get to whatever the hell Brooklyn did on Wednesday night?
I had Trey Johnson as a top 3 prospect in this draft. He would not have lasted to 6th if I would have been in charge of one of these franchises. So this isn't where I thought he was going, but once Ace Bailey is off the board for Washington, for at least in my mind, this was the obvious thing to do.
Yeah, I was told that Washington, I don't have the details of what exactly it was, but Washington was involved in a legitimate trade talk that went up till, 2 minutes, 3 minutes before the pick was made. It didn't happen. They keep Trey. All right, let's just talk Brooklyn overall, because they take Igor Demin at 8. That is, if you looked at a mock draft on December 15th, entirely possible. There was no mock, and I do appreciate this. I like when teams are not going. We have a few instances here on Wednesday night where you have teams quite clearly zagging against the pack. I appreciate that. Have some convictions in your big board. That being said, Demin wasn't projected as a top 10 pick. I don't believe anywhere. I actually, in particular, I was high on him. I think I might have mocked him and big boarded Demin higher than anyone of the 5 or 6 of us at CBS that did this. But they take the pick. What's intriguing about this is that I had an Eastern Conference GM text me 20 minutes before the draft started. I said, listen, will we see a trade in the top 10? If so, what team is going to instigate it? What's most likely? And this GM said Brooklyn, and it'll try to move up to get Charlotte's spot at 4. That didn't happen. Well, by nature of drafting Demin, it doesn't indicate that they were trying to do that at all. And in fact, I mean, maybe they did try to move to 9, 10, 11, or 12 because they maybe their intel suggested that maybe Toronto was sweet on Demin, or maybe the Bulls were. I don't know. I don't think so. But they go big there with a tall point guard who's an amazing passer, has such a long way to go with the shooting. But he's got some intriguing promise. And then elsewhere with Brooklyn, let's talk the Nets in general right now. I think Bill Simmons tweeted after the second pick that Sean Marks needs to be thrown in prison, which is crazy. But there were picks. Brooklyn, first of all, I said it would be insanity, so I have to own up to this, that Brooklyn would keep all 5 picks. No one I talked to in the past 3 days, or in 2+ days, they got the 5th pick at the 11th hour, so to speak, thought that Brooklyn would keep them all. But they're going to keep 5 first-round picks. That's the first time in the modern era. They take Nolan Traore out of France at 19. They got Drake Powell in the swap with Atlanta. They get him at 22. They get Ben Saraf out of Israel at 26, and then they take Danny Wolf at 27. The commonality with all of these players is that they all have serious work to do to getting to be a reliable NBA shot maker, and in some of these cases, like shot creators as well. So they're all projects. And the fact that you would have 5 picks and at no point would you have drafted, just broadly speaking here, Parrish, like you take Demin over Jakucionis, or even like
you take Demin over
Malawach, right? A big who almost everyone mocked Malawach to Brooklyn. So that doesn't happen. Malawach weirdly falls to 10, by the way. We'll get to him in a second. They take Traore at 19 when you could have had, again, you still could have. Jakucionis falling is amazing. We'll get to him eventually. Wolf dropped more than they expected there, and they go after Powell, who did have real interest. They swapped that pick with Atlanta, and I was told that at that point, Powell was on the very short list. So it's interesting that Brooklyn actually moved to get him when Atlanta was also coincidentally enough very interested in getting him, and then that didn't wind up happening. Atlanta gets the local kid, so to speak, in Asa Newell. How do you feel about what Brooklyn did here? Because we've literally never seen this, and this feels like it has, and I love Danny Wolf, and he was underdrafted in my opinion, but this feels like it has very ripe potential to go down as a very bad draft and be a perma example of this is why you would never want 5 first-round picks and keep all 5, because look what Brooklyn did in 2025.
As always, you never know. We'll look back at some point in time and have a better grasp for whether this was a good night or bad night for the Brooklyn franchise. But in this moment, we're talking about it in this moment. If I were a Brooklyn fan and you told me we had 5 first-round picks and these are the 5 players we came away with, I would not be happy. This is not what I would have wanted. You just think of it as scouting reports on each of these prospects, and you got pros and cons. On at least 4 of the 5, as you indicated, among the areas of concern would be shot-making ability. Like, basically every one of these guys is great positional size, interesting passer, but has never really shot it well from the perimeter, and that's got to get better. And I just don't love, in a time when perimeter shooting has quite literally never been more emphasized or important in the sport of basketball, I don't like adding a bunch of guys that among the first things you say about them is they got to become better shooters. Like, I've heard coaches talk about this all the time. How do you get a great shooting team? Recruit great shooters. That's the easiest way. And this doesn't mean that the Nets will not be a great shooting team going forward, but they are not bringing established shooters or even reputable shooters into their franchise with this draft class.
Yeah. It's man, oh man, just I love when the draft surprises, but this was genuinely surprising to me. Keeping all 5 in this 5 combo. It's wild. You know what else is wild? The worst team in the SEC had a top 9 pick. Colin Murray-Boyles went to the Raptors. I'm a seller on him in general. He did have a moment that was then clarified. He got picked and he dropped an F-bomb, but it was more like a F, man. Like, this actually happened. I can't believe it. It wasn't an F. I gotta go to Toronto. But I know. Social media had its fun with a little bit there. He goes 9, and then Maluach falls to 10. He goes to Phoenix. Weird, by the way, with that. Within minutes of each other, and I think this is what indicates, like, Phoenix, understandably so, did not think Maluach was going to be there for them at 10. They've got a big board. It's their pick, and the highest ranked guy they have on their board is Maluach, so they go after him. But they pick up 2 Duke centers in literally a matter of moments between Mark Williams, who's only a few years into his career, and then Maluach. Williams obviously more advanced at this point in his career, so he'll be the starter. But Phoenix needed some bigs. This could really, if Maluach can grow into an elite defender, that's going to be one hell of a guy that fell to him at 10.
Yeah, for a Phoenix franchise that hadn't done very many smart things lately, I feel like they did well in this night. I mean, you had Mark Williams. I know the injury concerns, like his physical got flagged, and that's why he was still a member of the Charlotte franchise. And I know he's not perfect, and there's some indications that Charlotte didn't want to have to pay him going forward. But, like, he did average 15 and 10 in the NBA as a 23-year-old. That's not nothing. So you bring him to Phoenix, presumably to be the starter, and then you've got a teenage freak of nature who you can develop and hopefully really hit on that one. And I know we've talked about this before. I think everything we're talking about, we've talked about before. But the Warriors kind of tricked the league for a minute into thinking traditional centers are bad and you don't need them anymore, and let's just go small and spread everybody out and kill them. But we've gotten back away from that a little bit now. Oklahoma City starts 2 bigs. The Lakers tried to play small against Minnesota, got destroyed by Rudy Gobert. You need big men in the NBA. Almost regardless of how you think you're going to play, you need people built like this on your roster to accomplish things in the postseason. And in one night, Phoenix grabbed 2 big, physically imposing centers. And I think that's a move in the right direction.
You would think, but there's a lot of, all right, what awaits here in Phoenix and what kind of operation they got going on with Ishbia, new front office, all this kind of new coaching staff. We'll see. And they get rid of Durant, the whole deal. Let's get to this one. Cedric Coward. So I'm not going to tell a story again. I've told on HQ like 5 times, told on the pod, all that stuff. Please go find the story if you haven't. Gotten some good response to it. And by the way, on a personal note, like, I don't write these stories because of this, but as a function of like doing these pre-draft features that I do every year, you wind up hearing from people because it's a very revealing feature, and people that are tasked with drafting these players, they want to get as much information as possible, and so it does seem like the story itself just only encouraged Coward's rise into the lottery in recent days, from what I was told and what happened here.
You got Cedric Coward drafted in the lottery?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Wow.
I'm saying the story probably didn't hurt. This dude went 11th, man.
I would like to give the credit to Cedric Coward, but if you want to take some of it, you can.
I will take none of it. He went 11th, and he is going to Memphis. I think it's really awesome from a podcast perspective that I did this big old story on this guy, and now he's going to be living in your city. He goes 11th, and Portland had the pick. Now, there were a couple franchises, and I'll say Portland is one of them, that his representation did not want him to go to. Now, there are different reasons why agents will not want their clients to play at different franchises. Those reasons can vary, but Portland, broadly speaking, and I'm just sharing this objectively because of what was told to me by multiple people, just it feels like a franchise right now that is near the bottom in the NBA in terms of the direction it's going, the competency, at certain points within the front office structure, et cetera, et cetera. That's not my opinion; it's the opinions of others. But lo and behold, he gets taken 11th, and Memphis takes him. Coward and his camp were joyfully optimistic that Memphis in general, which initially had 16 going into the night, was going to be the lowest case scenario. Like Memphis was taking him at 16 if he was still there, but Chicago was interested. Atlanta was interested, San Antonio was interested, and Oklahoma City was definitely interested. And instead, he goes 11th, man. It is incredible. I assume at some point very soon you're going to have him on your show in Memphis. You will enjoy him. He is incredible. And Memphis fans, you got just of what I've known from him, from talking to him to talking to people that have known him his entire life, and just looking into him as a player, a human over the past month or so, a little bit more than that, he seems to be like someone who is going to absolutely thrive in the culture at Memphis, GP.
I can tell you the folks back home are excited. Desmond Bane was a big part of that franchise. I don't think the fan base was eager to move him, but after stumbling to the finish line again and, extended years of a John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane core that hadn't accomplished much other than finishing second place in the West a few times. But once it got playoff basketball, the results aren't there. And so the front office, honestly, during exit interviews, made it pretty clear they felt like they needed to shake something up, get a little uncomfortable. And the first big step in that was the Desmond Bane trade. Some people, I think, mistakenly thought that was the beginning of a rebuild in Memphis. Next up, Jaren Jackson Jr., next up, John Morant. Let's tear it down. But they were never going to do that. They do not want to do that. They want to still try to be good, just with a different third best player. So they're going to go forward with John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. for better or worse. And the Desmond Bane trade helped give them the type of assets that made it possible to move up in a draft like this. And Zach Kleiman, the general manager there, has a history of he moves up in drafts to get what he wants. He'll overpay in some people's eyes to move up spots if he believes this is the player I want to get in this moment. And they had clearly identified Cedric Coward that way. Obviously, they were sitting there at 16. He was sitting there at 11. And they did not believe he was going to make it to 16. Let me stop here.
Yep.
He was not going to make it.
He was
to
not
16.
going. Based on what was, kind of shared with me on background heading in, I just don't think there was any chance he was making it to 16. And I think, the GM well. He carries a very quality reputation. I think he just successfully snuffed this out. And I'm actually supposed to get, this isn't good for podcast purpose, I'm supposed to get a little more of the story tomorrow once things settle a little bit about what truly went on with this movement here. And one last thing for me on this, and we keep moving. If you're Coward in general, like it's just unreal that you would go from having 2 Division III offers 4 years ago, and then now you're the 11th pick in the draft. But to know that a franchise was like, we're moving up 5 spots from the mid-teens to make sure number 12 doesn't take you. Like, you're already on a rocket, and now this is going to send you into the ionosphere. That's got to be so amazing for a player's confidence stepping into an NBA franchise for the first time.
So it's the second straight year the Grizzlies have used a draft pick on a Washington State Husky.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good call.
And the second straight year they have used a draft pick on somebody who started their career outside of Division I basketball. And I don't think this will be the case on opening night. And I'm not certain it'll be the case at any point next season. But if this thing goes the way you hope it goes when you move up into the top 11 to draft somebody, there is a scenario where a starting lineup for the Grizzlies someday could be Ja Morant, Jalen Wells, Cedric Coward, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey, a 5-player starting lineup featuring 2 Washington State Huskies that did not begin their career in Division I college basketball. That's pretty neat.
And then even just with Morant and Edey, those were once like, no star. Like Edey was ranked 450th in his class and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty cool. All right, let's keep it moving here. Let's talk New Orleans. They take Derek Queen by trading with Atlanta. So Atlanta bumped down, and then Atlanta would wind up actually trading again there. Now, Queen, I was told, was very much like under consideration for New Orleans at 7, but ultimately they were not going to be able to justify taking him that high. But they did covet him. So the information that I was getting wound up being accurate there. But the Pelicans are coming under, I think, some scrutiny here, and I understand why. Fears at 7, no one's going to really criticize you for. I just think that there is a chance that he doesn't hit, and ultimately it just winds up being like you took a really undersized guard who doesn't defend, and what is he 3, 4, 5 years from now? Maybe he can become a very high-level point guard in the NBA. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just I'm a seller on him relative to most. If you listen to the pod, you're aware of that. Queen, meantime, could also be a player who does bust out. I don't think he will. He's very crafty, very smart, very talented, sees the floor well, good handle, really good feet. I think he should be able to develop into a really good rebounder. But objectively speaking, Fears was a polarizing prospect. Some teams wouldn't have had him top 10, but he goes there. And then you've got Queen, who, like, New Orleans liked him, and there were a couple other teams that were in this realm that I think probably would have taken him, but there was mixed feedback on some of his team workouts and questions about conditioning. And I don't say this like jokingly or flippantly. Like, you see what Zion Williamson has been up and down, and also I'm dead. Like, this is stuff that like NBA people will talk about, like just purely in business terms. But he is going to one of the best American food cities, the best one in the entire country, and you're worried about his physical conditioning, making sure that he keeps the weight off, gets more muscle tone. New Orleans is an incredible restaurant city. So, like, by bringing him there, Joe Dumars is running the operation. There's just, I think, in the wake of draft night here, there's some like, is this really going to work for New Orleans, or is this going to be a spectacular flame out and they're going to be a franchise that's picking in the top 5 of the lottery more times than not over the next half decade? I don't know. I wrote a feature on Queen. I love his personality. I think he's got a great chance to succeed. I do genuinely wonder, not even just because of like, the great po' boys, you can get anything like that. I'm talking about purely franchise stuff. I do wonder if this is a situation here with a player where certain franchises would have been a better fit to give him a better chance to have success. Could be wrong. I'm not saying it won't be New Orleans, but I do wonder if that kind of situation is on the board here with Queen, who went 13th.
So I don't like this. It's not what I would have done. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it's not what I would have done. I would have taken Carter Bryant at 13. I think he's a better fit and a better prospect. So I would have taken Carter Bryant. He went 1 spot lower to the Spurs. So the Spurs were waiting to get the guy that you could have taken. That means you probably messed up.
Yeah. In addition, sorry, just real quick, I didn't mention this. It's mentioned in the chat. New Orleans gave up an unprotected pick for next year as well. So that's what really has people up in arms. Like, you did this for Queen. Like, he needs to be almost all-star level good to justify it to begin with. And that obviously could be something of a long shot.
So I think they took the wrong player, period. But that's obviously debatable. I'm sure there are other people out there who had Derek Queen with a better grade than Carter Bryant. So that's fine. I'm not even arguing that. But basically every year since they drafted Zion Williamson, the prevailing thought going into a draft in New Orleans is if you're building around Zion Williamson, you need to add shooting. Just surround him with shooters. He needs space to play in. You need shooters to create that space for him. Like, this isn't complicated stuff. Like, the idea that Zion Williamson needs space to play in is not, you don't have to be Tim Legler to understand that. All right. So are we still building around Zion Williamson? Because you just spent 2 lottery picks on non-shooters. I mean, so obviously Zion, Google it. He's got some off-court issues. This just makes me wonder, even though they have consistently said our plan is still to build around Zion Williamson, I don't think the way they drafted is the way to build around Zion Williamson. And I don't want to get too cute with it either, but and I don't even think this should be a non-starter, but there has to be somewhere in your head. We spent the number 1 pick on a draft on a guy who has conditioning problems, and it has been a pain in our ass the entire time. Are we really about to spend a lottery pick on another guy that people are telling us has conditioning problems? Are we doing this again? Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it for that reason, but I'm saying it would be in my head somewhere. Are we really going down this path again? As always, we'll see, but this does not look like I like Jeremiah Fears independent of everything else that I'm saying. And I like Derek Queen independent of everything else that I'm saying. I don't know that I like them together on a team with Zion Williamson.
Fair. We talked about Brian at 14. Sorber goes 15 to OKC. There's just not much to say about it. Like, maybe this is another great get, and we look up and he's a great producer, but you would think he's gonna get minimal minutes next season. Okay,
you won't even see him for 2 years, and then there'll be a big that they can't afford, and
sure, that's the plan.
And then Thomas Sorber steps into that. That's the next trick for Sam Presti. Once you pay Chet and Shea and Jalen, and you can't pay these other role players because the second apron is a killer, Thomas Sorber has to be ready to step into a role. You ready for this? You might not even say his name or think of him for a year or 2, but there will be a day where an Oklahoma City role player in the front court is moving on for some reason, and this will be the player that's supposed to step in and fill that role.
And then we get to the 16th pick. We're not going to be breaking down tape here, folks. We're just going to talk about the reaction and the shock value here, because in the trade with the Grizzlies, the Portland Trailblazers go back to 16, and they draft a super, super tall dude out of China, center Yang Hansen, who in our prospect rankings, and this is all credit to Kyle Boone because he was the one that was responsible for the majority of this on the back end, he was 43rd. So this is a player who, if he had gone like 25, 26, 27, it's still a reach, but you're like, okay, like, you're back end first round. Maybe you really believe in it. This is just, you get one of these at the NBA level every so often. This feels more common in the NFL, where you've got more positional needs, and sometimes there are big swings that are taken by franchises and it just kind of blows everyone away. This is astounding. And maybe it winds up being one of the most brilliant picks of 2025. I am open to that possibility, but this is the most inexplicable draft pick of the entire evening. And again, it just kind of speaks a little bit to some of the hesitation with Portland. I had a few folks tell me that, there were certain agents that didn't send their players to Portland and didn't want to, because they just didn't want to have that option be on the table. Here they are. And this guy, presumably this player would have been taken by no other franchise on Wednesday night. Portland opted to go with him at 16.
The biggest surprise of the first round, I think, by far. And yet I'm going to stop short of calling it inexplicable, because just think about this as a thought exercise. In whatever draft Nikola Jokic was in, if he, with the 16th pick,
if he had gone 16th, sure,
what would have been the reaction?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he was famously drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. The whole thing. Yes. I know.
Everybody would have come back on TV, and Adam Silver would have announced the pick, and everybody would have said, "What? This guy doesn't show up in first round of mocks anywhere. Like, he's supposed to go in the 40s or the 50s. What are they doing in Portland?" And yet, if we had to revisit that in 10 years, you would look back on it and say, that is maybe the greatest draft pick of all time, to take somebody nobody thought should go in the top 20 in the top 20 and then watch him turn into a 3-time MVP. That was amazing. You just don't know. Like Marc Gasol was picked 48th in a draft one year. If you would have asked me for my thoughts on him in that moment, even though I watched him play high school basketball in Memphis because his brother Powell played for the Grizzlies, I would have said, I don't think he's ever going to be a relevant NBA player. He was the defensive player of the year. So I'm always going to be open-minded about these things. I'm skeptical for all the obvious reasons, but just think of it from this perspective. Not everybody who runs an NBA franchise is good at it, but broadly speaking, these are not dumb people. They're not dumb people. And so if you work in that Portland front office, you know exactly what the reaction is going to be to this. The whole world is going to scratch their head and ask what you're doing. My point is, you've got to have a real conviction to do something like this. It is very easy to take Cooper Flagg, number 1. It is very easy to take Dylan Harper, number 2. It's pretty easy to take Ace Bailey, number 5, even if he says he don't want to play for you. Mm-hmm. This is much harder to do because the whole world is going to call you stupid in real time. I'm not going to do it, but most people are going to call you an idiot for doing something like this. And if it doesn't work, big questions start getting asked. So I like that part of it. I like that they had to feel really strongly about this to do it. And I'll be intrigued to see how it works out.
Yeah, I am as well. Again, I appreciate when teams have real convictions and we get real time. Here's the moment. You got to make the pick and you see actual evidence of how teams as big boards cannot reflect broad groupthink when it comes to mock drafts. Portland's a clear example of that. We'll see if a relatively big gamble pays off. 17, Jan Beringer goes to Minnesota. He was a riser. Some thought he was going to crack into the lottery. That did not happen. We talked about Clayton at 18. We talked about Traore to Brooklyn at 19. Let's get to a really good bargain player. And as I go through what we talked about so far, 1 through 20, I think Trey Johnson at 6, a really good bargain. Malawach maybe borderline whether he qualifies or not. Brian at 14, he's in that conversation, but I don't think anyone, with the exception of like how big I am on Johnson, like if he really does wind up being like a top 2 player in the class, him going 6 will be obviously a great deal. Kasparas Jakucionis going 20th to of all teams, he goes to Miami. It really does feel like almost every year the Heat wind up drafting a player that should have gone many spots before that, and it just is a general fit. At this point, it almost feels beyond rote, the issues with the turnovers, and I get that entirely. He's got real size, incredible passing ability. I long ago talked myself into the vision that he is just going to be a player that grows into a very reliable NBA starter, and we'll look back at his college year at Illinois and be like, yeah, he actually had some interesting moments there. And he had some like hype and he went first, went top 20 first round and all that, but he wasn't this. Like, I think he will grow into that. I think he is going to be one of the 10 best players from this class. He drops all the way to 20. I sent a few texts on it. It was kind of inexplicable. I actually think it's a reflection of how flat the draft started to look basically around 15. And I'd say 15 to 24, pretty flat. And that's reflective of that. But the Heat, man, GP, how big are you on Jakucionis? I know you like the pick because of the value, but pre-draft, big board for you. Like, I had him top 8. I don't know if you were that high. Where was he for you, big board? Not even mock, like big board wise, where would you have ranked him?
Well, let's see exactly where I had him in my final mock draft. I had him at 12 going to the Chicago Bulls. So obviously I would have had him going higher than this, probably much higher than this. I sent a couple of texts as well, during the show, because it felt like, and there's one of these every year, or it feels like there's one of these every year.
Last year it was Filipowski, which was even more drastic than this.
Yes.
And then the year before it was Whitmore, who was like, thought what, GP, maybe in top 5 convo, and he went like 18th or 19th. I can't remember everything. And but anyway, 3 years in a row we've had a big time drop.
And there's usually an explanation. Like you may not have it in real time, But then you start asking these questions, and they're like, "Yeah, there's some injury stuff with Whitmore," or "Yeah, did you read about Filipowski's girlfriend?" Like, there's some stuff like, and you go, "Oh, okay."
Mhm.
And so in that spirit, I start sending the text about Jakucionis. Like, is there what is happening here? Because nobody expected this. And what I got back was it's nothing like the Filipowski stuff or nothing like it's just this is the way one person put it. Not a great athlete, didn't shoot it well at Illinois, and turned it over a lot. So this is what the person told me. You like the idea of him. You like the idea of him. But the idea of him is not what he actually was, at least in his 1 year of college basketball. And this person told me, I think you guys have just been a little higher on him than most.
Yeah. Okay. And it could be fair. Maybe that winds up, maybe he's just a jag. You just never know. Maybe he plays himself out of the league in 5 years. We don't know. But it seems like really, really good value there. Good on the Heat. Will Riley. So interestingly enough, back-to-back Illini, Will Riley goes 21 to Washington. It was the Jazz pick, and then that went over to Washington. Fine. I'm not especially high on him. I feel like that's a little bit of a reach, but we'll see if it pays off. Interestingly enough, though, two Illinois players that weren't really next to each other in terms of big board wind up being squeezed back-to-back on draft night. We talked about Powell going to Brooklyn. Asa Newell goes 23 to Atlanta. I thought Atlanta was actually, so they swapped spots here again with Brooklyn for whatever reason. And I thought Newell was going to go the spot before, but he winds up, staying local and going to the Hawks. I think it's relatively good value. We'll roll this off 3, 4, 5 in a row. GP. Newell goes 23 to Atlanta. Nick Clifford gets traded to Sacramento. That was Oklahoma City's pick. No surprise there. A few people thought OKC was going to hold on to both picks there. So Clifford goes to Sacramento, and then Jace Richardson goes 25 to the Magic. I said earlier on HQ that he was definitely viewed as a faller for a variety of reasons. That wound up happening. Take it wherever you want with any of those three players.
Jace Richardson falling this far, I guess, wasn't a surprise, but I would have had him going higher than this. I know he's on the small side, like just without shoes, a little better than 6 foot. That'd be tough if he were a primary lead guard, but he is mostly considered at this point in his life a combo guard. And so that's the best explanation for why did he slip all the way down to 25. It's that in a time where positional size is being emphasized. I mean, they really did it in Brooklyn. You might not like the draft, but they clearly valued positional size. This is a situation where you're not valuing positional size. But two things. The Magic are big just about everywhere else. So they're a big team. So you can put him on the court with big players and probably get away with it. And over the final 15 games of his season, because as you know, he wasn't a starter earlier in the year and then became a starter. And then Tom realized we got to keep him in that lineup and as one of the centerpieces of this team. And that's where it sort of took off. He shot 42% from three. Orlando last season was the worst 3-point field goal percentage team in the NBA. Now they just added Desmond Bane, so that's going to help that, but they still needed to add shooting. And Jace Richardson adds somebody who can come in, play either guard spot in spots, and also, reliably knock down a shot.
These three quickies on these three players. I think Newell can be like a top 20 rebounder in the NBA in time. I think that's actually good value for Atlanta. We'll see if he winds up being a guy who sticks, but I think that pick right there makes sense. That's about the range that I thought he would go in. He previously had some like end of lottery projections there. Nick Clifford, hey, just love to see it, man. Colorado State, stand up. You get it done. You go to Sacramento. Coincidentally enough, I talked to an NBA person earlier. No, it was not an NBA person. It was a college person earlier on Wednesday. And they said he's got traits. Now he's like, they're not the same player, but some of his traits remind me of Tyrese Halliburton, who coincidentally enough was drafted to Sacramento. He's not going to be Tyrese Halliburton. Don't get me wrong. But Clifford was so hot near the end of the season and he gets it done, gets drafted. I love seeing that. And then Richardson, I also think I had two NBA teams tell me the fact that he had a hole in his knee that didn't get discovered until early part of his high school year, had to have a bone graft put on. There's just concerns with the medical on the knee are also why he dropped. And some probably thought that he might have been on the board to drop to the very end of the first round, but the Magic take him, and we'll see if he can be a successful addition there. He's got to work on physicality, bulking up, but I think he is just too good of a presence and smart not to stick in the NBA. I just wonder if he'll ever be a starting guard in the NBA. Saraf goes 26, Wolf goes 27, 3 more players. Hugo Gonzalez goes to Boston at 28. It's about the range that he was projected to be at. Celtics got a super interesting situation. We're not going to break down on this podcast because we're not an NBA free agency or roster breakdown podcast, but it is crazy interesting that a team that won the NBA championship a little more than 12 months ago now seems to have a roster that like is fighting for a 7 seed. It's just going to be it'll be intriguing to see what happens there. And then the final 2 picks. Liam McNeely goes to Charlotte after Phoenix traded out of that. And Yannick Conan-Niederhauser, who we talked about on the mock draft with KP, he goes 30th. That's a Big Ten record, by the way. Big Ten had 8 first-round picks, never had that many in one season. Good for him. They'll find you anywhere. A couple of examples of that in this. But McNeely falling to 29. I said this on our draft show. I don't get it. His camp was thinking like 2021 was his floor. I'd love to. I truly would love to like be able to check the scouting reports of teams that were picking, like Brooklyn 26 or 27, even Atlanta 23, Brooklyn again at 22. I understand why Miami goes Jakucionis, Washington at 21. Why did McNeely fall to 29? Fink said it on the HQ show, GP. He is an NBA player. Like at this point, you are wanting to draft someone that, barring the unthinkable, is just going to play at least 2 NBA contracts, at least. And I think he has the mental makeup. I think he has the shooting capability. I think he has the adaptability to be at least a net neutral defender for his size overall. Really good passer, awesome teammate, doesn't stand down to a challenge. I think there's a very healthy chance that he is one of the 12 or so best players to come out of this draft a half decade from now. And I'm totally befuddled how he dropped to 29. I actually think it might be even more egregious than Jakucionis dropping to 20.
So the order of the first 30 picks was maybe not exactly what anybody expected or predicted, but these are largely the players we thought would have their names called tonight.
No one was left in the green room, right?
I don't believe anybody was left in the green room.
Niederhauser was the last one. It's a side note. I know they want to make all these dreams. There's just too many people in the green room, but do whatever. It's not the end of the world. But like you do chance someone going there and making it to Thursday, and that's embarrassing as hell. But they avoided it this year. But the more people you invite in, the higher chance that that's gonna happen. That and the hat thing, which is just beyond the fact. It's
ridiculous.
And 2025 is just, and we talked about it on the HQ show, and then make your point. This is an all-time moment in memory. These are photographs that you will have blown up to be, 36 by 48 inches in the front foyer of whatever beautiful house that you're able to buy, and give pictures to everyone, every relative that you know, and you're wearing the wrong freaking hat. Like, get it together and fix it. It's not the biggest deal, but it also is kind of shitty. You're getting drafted in the NBA. You're going to go play with one franchise. Don't have the wrong hat up there and have it put it on to shake hands with Adam Silver, pose for the cameras, take all these pictures, do all these interviews, and you're not wearing the right hat. It's 2025 NBA. Get it the hell together.
Prediction. They will get it to hell together before 2026. And they should have already done it. Like, this isn't like complicated. I mean, just we just ask Shams, who is this guy actually going to be playing for? And then hand him that hat and we're done. It's pretty easy. And I don't care about all the protocols and that stuff. Just make it sensible, because to your point, Cedric Howard, on the night he became an important member of the Memphis Grizzlies, he has photographs wearing a Portland Trailblazers hat.
Wow. And he also, unfortunately, it was a gaffe, but he got called Colin Cowherd.
He got called Colin Cowherd, too. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Yes, they've got to fix that. And here's why I know they're going to fix it by 2026. Because even though you and I have talked about this for years at 2:00 in the morning, just like this, tonight it really got taken to another level. I think everybody was talking about it tonight. I know Scott Van Pelt was talking about it on SportsCenter tonight. And the NBA is such a reactionary league. Like, people are like, why don't you have the Larry O'Brien trophy on the court? Next finals game, they've got the trophy on the court.
Yeah.
Why don't you show the starting lineups and make it feel like a big deal? Next finals game, they're showing the starting lineups to make it. So the same way they heard that, they'll hear this, and this will be fixed by next year. And it needs to be, because it's ridiculous.
I cut off a point you were about to make on McNeely, I think, by the way. So sorry about that.
The point I was going to make is I'm just going to. It's going to come across as patting myself on the back a little bit, but I don't even mean it that way, because I don't think this is that hard, given the way that it played out. The way just about every bracketologist is going to get 66 out of 68. I think just about any mock drafter is going to get about 26, 27, 28 of these players that went in the first round correct. Because in my final mock, the first 26 players I had mocked all got picked, and I only missed on 3. And they were the players that I had 27th, 29th, and 30th. But 27 of the players who were picked tonight were in my final mock draft. And I think you're going to find that with most of them. So again, did most people have Yegor Dim going in the top 10? No. Liam McNeely falling all the way down to 29? No. But the 30 players who were picked tonight, at least 27 of them were players just about everybody thought were going to be picked tonight.
Yeah, I think, probably. And once we were getting to once McNeely went at 29, before we even knew Niederhauser going 30, I was like, for the most part, this is broadly speaking what the projections had. That said, we've got round 2 Thursday. We're not going to do a reaction pod to that. Here are the best players available, in my opinion. You've got Cam Jones, Marquette, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Creighton, Noah Penda out of France, got to be up there high. Maxime Reynaud from Stanford, Chaz Lanier, Tennessee, Rasheer Fleming, St. Joe's, Kobe Brea, Kentucky, Tyrese Proctor, Duke, Janai Broom, Auburn, and Adu Thiero from Arkansas. Those would be my best players on the board heading into Thursday. I think it's probably inevitable that I've got a couple of guys on that list that will still be there in the 40s. You get in the second round, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons why guys go where they go. There's a lot of politicking. Once you get into the back half of the second round, there are agents that don't even want their guys drafted to begin with, because they think they can maneuver different and better situations by having them not drafted. So keep that in mind as well. If there's a player that you really like and you think he's deserving to go and he's not picked, in the final 6-7 picks, just know that sometimes it's actually for the best, and it's not actually a reflection of whether they're not one of the 60 best prospects in this draft. For you, GP, who was your highest ranked player that didn't get picked, and therefore your highest ranked guy on the board heading into Thursday night?
Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joseph's. I had him going 27th in my final mock. That makes him the highest projected player that was not selected. If you're curious, the 3 players that I had going in the first round who were not selected in the first round is Rasheer Fleming at 27, Maxime Reynaud at 28, and Ryan Kalkbrenner at 30. To be clear, I had those players going 27, 28, and 30. They were not picked. The players who were picked in the first round that I did not have going in the first round, that is Young Hansen, Drake Powell.
Yep.
And
Hugo?
No, I had Hugo Gonzalez. Oh, yeah, Yannick.
Yannick Keener. Okay, yeah, Niederhauser. Yeah. It's late. We got to get out of here. But before we do, I'm sorry, not a mic time. You get Knippel at 4, and then you get McNeely at 29 with the Hornets there. Knippel's camp was hopeful it would be Charlotte. I talked to his father earlier on Wednesday. They were hopeful, but they were in the dark. They truly did not have a real sense, because Philly and not knowing what they were going to do really loomed heavy over that. Let's hear the night of scouting report draft recap from Nada. What are you thinking on those Hornets, buddy?
I will say this: if LaMelo Ball plays 50 games, like both of them are going to hit multiple threes. I expect 35, 36% three-point shooting. It's the one thing the Charlotte Hornets need more than anything else. They'll get 2 bigs with picks 33, 34. And I wasn't a fan of Knippel initially, but I will say this: I understand the vision now that you get 2 shooters.
Okay, there we go. I think they're also really good additions to the locker room. Just hearing from a couple of NBA folks, it's not that I'm not saying that Charlotte has a bad locker room. Just sounds like having a couple of guys that are just ultra tough, ready to do anything for the team, really good teammates step in there. And there were plenty of guys that were qualified for this kind of role. It just seems like those are 2 guys that that are ready to up the level there, and that's pretty cool. And then, by the way, both of them have a relationship with Flagg. They were both teammates. Liam McNeely previously in high school, and then Knipple obviously this past season at Duke. So that'll be pretty intriguing. Charlotte and Utah, those are my two biggest winners from Wednesday, and we'll see what happens on Thursday.
If I had to pick a winner, I think I might go San Antonio. You get Dylan Harper at number 2, then you had Carter Bryant with that second lottery pick. But fun night. Now it's 2:20.
Yeah. For everyone
Eastern.
that had this early in the morning on Thursday, we love you. We wanted to get you this recap right away before you prep for Thursday night's draft. It is late. Oh my gosh, we have been talking so much today. You might be able to hear it. The voice, it's fading on me. So let's call that a show.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to the legend, Terry Teagle, Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. There are more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. Please do that. We'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.